Hello, my name's Edwin Aitken. I'm an artist based in London, England, and I'm recording this at the end of January 2025. Although I live in London now, originally I'm from Manchester in the north of England. When I was growing up in Manchester, my first point of contact with art was through comics and cartoons. And the legacy of that early interest in that medium, that sort of art form, influenced the work I started to make when I was on my degree. I was very interested in the idea that you could maybe form a language within art that would be your own. And I started to take images, graphic marks, colours, graphic forms like speech bubbles, and started to integrate those into my paintings. And I was trying to sort of almost produce a kind of hybrid type of image that took, on the one hand, graphic imagery like cartoons, but also combined it with a really expressive and overtly painterly handling of materials. This in part was inspired by a lot of the artists who were active at this time when I was a student, people like Basilisk, people like Kiefer. I'd seen an exhibition at the Tate of Sigmar Polke's work, and that was really influential. The idea that you could take things from different points of history, different parts of art, you could combine them together, and the way that people like Polke, Basilisk, and even linking back to people like de Kooning, the way that they were using paint in such an authoritative and such a compelling way really inspired me and was a great influence on my work. The idea that you could form this approach to painting that would be like a language was something that I further explored and developed when I was doing my MA at the Royal College of Art in London. And once I'd finished the Royal College, I moved to an area of East London. When I moved to this part of East London, I was amazed that amongst all the concrete, the roads, the houses, the cars, there was this patch of woodland, like an island of green in amongst all of the grey. And the woods are a part of the wider forest, known as Epping Forest, but it's disconnected from that main bulk of the forest. And it was an area that I started to explore, walking for recreation, enjoyed spending time in nature, but gradually over time, the influence of that woodland started to affect and impact on the work I was making. The artist Peter Lanyon has said about his own work that he felt it was impossible for him to make a painting that has no reference to the very powerful landscape in which he lives. And I suppose for me, the thing that Lanyon was saying is that where you live and your environment can't help but influence, and for me, kind of very much integrate with the work I'm making. The woods have influenced the role of landscape within my own painting. And for me, I'm not so concerned with producing a very specific view of a recognisable space or location. The landscape really functions in my work as a kind of metaphorical space where thoughts, feelings, emotions are kind of provoked by that direct experience of the landscape. It's very much a creation of an interior world through the activity of painting. I often draw in the woods. Sometimes these works are pieces in their own right. Other times I'm starting something in the woods with a view to bringing it back to the studio and continuing to work on it there. I'm trying all the time to, I suppose, work my way through the very varied experiences that I have in the landscape. The woods are kind of split between two sections. One section's in London, the other section is in Essex. And one of the suburban roads actually kind of works its way through the forest and actually becomes the boundary marker between the two areas. And the two areas are very different. The London half used to be part of a private estate. So the woods at that time were essentially a garden. So in the spring, you see things like rhododendrons, and there's ornamental ponds that have become a little overgrown, whereas the Essex side was always part of Epping Forest. And to some degree is a little wilder and a little less managed and less planned. And they both have a very different feel to them. So often I'm drawing in different locations in the woods, and that feeds into some of the stylistic elements that appear in the work. In terms of the appearance of the paintings, very much the marks that are used can reference real things in the landscape. Other times they are very much improvised. And there can be a certain messiness that this brings to the kind of making and thinking about the work. And one of the challenges I have is almost controlling the amount of stimulus that is feeding into the work. And I suppose editing or processing and selecting those things. And that's something that I have to keep telling myself, that not every painting needs to do everything. And I suppose all the time I'm looking for some kind of balance or harmony, yet a kind of balance and harmony that arrives with its own sort of set of criteria, so that each painting, although they're all connected, each one is subtly different, sometimes quite dramatically different from another painting. I'm often asked about the type and kind of colour I use in my work. For many people, they're surprised that the range of colours doesn't seem to reflect colours that you would expect that would be present from a starting point of the natural world. So with my work, there isn't a great deal of green or browns, and the colours often seem quite unnatural or artificial, very high key colours, very strong yellows, strong pinks. And I suppose if you look hard enough, you can find those in nature. A friend of mine has said that he thinks my colour is cultural, and that's an interesting observation. Maybe that does relate back to some of my earliest influences in my life. Another reason why maybe there are a certain lack of colours in my work is I have a partial red-green colour blindness, and certain shades of green I can struggle with a little bit. I suppose in some ways I'm not 100% sure as to why exactly certain colours are there and certain colours aren't there. But what I do know is the colour seems to be the right colour at the right time in the work. Although my work is inspired to a significant degree by a place that's specific to a certain geographic location, and that location in many respects is a very local type of place, I have an ambition for my paintings that they still make a strong connection with people who don't know anything about that point of reference. And my paintings, they're really a kind of artifact of my own thoughts and feelings. And as they are this kind of imaginative and subjective interpretation of the landscape, they're very, very much my response to the world around me. There are aspects of nature such as growth, decay, death, and also beauty that are present in my work, and those things interest me. And they're also universal themes that all humans experience, the key aspects of life that I'm continually drawn to explore, consider, and include as really important parts of my paintings. And in many respects, these things are what my paintings are ultimately about, as they are these kind of elements of a shared experience that we all have, which we can all relate to and understand. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about my work, and for giving me this opportunity to show you the kind of things that I make.